I think you're going to be really interested. This is a really cool new initiative the University of Georgia is taking that's going to involve all of us in our classes and our students' extracurricular activities. But I just wanted to say before that this is the first step. We're not going to be able to run back to our offices and do this today. There are logistical things within the college that we'll be doing before you're going to get to the steps that we're talking about today. It's going to work much like our course proposals, where we're going to have to do the voting and put it in Kappa and all those things that we're used to with course proposals. And that was a very vague and uninforming thing to start with, but so I'm going to turn it over to the people who know what they're talking about. And most of you know Fiona Liken, who's the University of Georgia Registrar, and so this is her fun thing.
Yes.
So when we went out and looked nationally, these are typically what employers are saying they're looking for. So not surprising, analytical thinking, leadership, motivation, self-awareness. So the next step in the process was to determine at the University of Georgia what our institutional competencies were going to be. So to do that, we created a subcommittee, of course, because it's faculty governance and we're at the University of Georgia. And on that subcommittee, we had representatives from the Office of Instruction, Experiential Learning, the Assessment Office. Most importantly, we also included the Division of Student Affairs, because we know a lot of the learning takes place with activities in Student Affairs. And the Registrar's Office, of course, and then IT. So we included them all on this subcommittee or committee that started working in 2020, worked for about 3 years. That committee started by looking at the competencies, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So this is the competencies, the learning outcomes, and then how that feeds into this portal, and then eventually this comprehensive learner record. So this talks about where we went to see what competencies, what was being done nationally. So we looked initially at our competencies at UGA that we already had, that we were already assessing. So we knew that we had the general education abilities we're already assessing. We looked at the student affairs essential skills. We also looked at the undergraduate program learning outcomes that we have across campus. And then from there, we sort of branched out and looked at what peer and aspirant institutions were doing for shared competencies. And we looked at the AACU essential learning outcomes and the NACE career readiness competencies. So we took all of that. We met like every couple of weeks for what seemed like forever. And we refined those until we came up with 6 competencies and learning outcomes associated with those. From there, we took those out to faculty focus groups and the Gen Ed subcommittee. And we asked them to give us feedback, and the committee from that point sort of tweaked the learning outcomes, tweaked the competencies, but this is where they landed. So this process took, well, as I said, quite some time, but then we took it through faculty governance, so it went to the Gen Ed subcommittee for approval, it went to the UCC, University Curriculum Committee, University Council, and then the president approved these. So they are the institutional competencies for the University of Georgia that we have in place today. So they are, each competency is defined with its own definition, obviously, and then it also has, on the next page, we'll show you, there's learning outcomes associated with each competency. So this is an example of analytical thinking and the learning outcomes for that competency. And what we're going to do at the University of Georgia is we're going to take courses and activities and we're going to map those to those learning competencies. So this is an example of Sociology 3590 and how the learning outcomes for that course map over to the learning outcomes for the competency. Now I'm going to turn it over to, so Shafali's going to talk to you about the approval process, and her office was instrumental in working with the vendor to create this approval process. So thanks, Shafali.
All right, so we are excited because what we were able to do was leverage Kappa, which all of you know is our course approval system on campus. And we added the ability to submit institutional competencies in the system. So the goal is pretty simple. We try to, this is an overview, literally like steps 1 through 5. And we'll take the example of a course change. So if you go into Kappa, you select your course, you want to do a course change, and then that's one, right? And then there's an automatic selection of the institutional competency if your course would satisfy a competency. And then you proceed, you go to the form, and we'll kind of stay here even though this is a selection screen. The form is essentially going to have your institutional competency tab selected for you. So as you can see, it'll have like a little red indicator, so you know that's one of the tabs you need to work on. We'll also have, so in the past, we had course objectives for the course, which I would describe as like a bucket, right? It was a text field where you went in and put in all your course objectives. So what we changed last year, I think like August, was to learning outcomes. So in the system, when you go in, now it'll require you to enter course learning outcomes for the course. So if you went in and did a course change and you had that bucket, now that's number 4. So you would need to go into the syllabus tab and make that change from the formatting from the course objectives to the learning outcomes. So this is the example of what I was saying. So if you have your course objectives, right, which are pretty much a text field, which is what we had in Kappa for a long time, now you'll have the ability to enter individual learning outcomes. And the system is built where you can add a new one. You can move your learning outcomes as you're working on them, up and down. You can delete, you can edit. So it's built to be easy to sort of at least use, right? This is then the institutional competency tab. So you've done your syllabus, and now you're coming to the institutional competency to say you're mapping your learning outcomes from what you just submitted in syllabus to the institutional competency learning outcomes. So this view is what you would see initially. It's a collapsed view, right? So you can see at a glance, these are the 6 competencies in the system. Here we're just showing that if you expand out, in this case, critical thinking, it shows in blue, it'll show the learning outcomes for the competency. And then the gray box is essentially a repeated set of your course learning outcomes. So you can come in, select, you can see which one, if it maps, would need to map to that competency, and you selected the checkbox, and it automatically makes that mapping to the competency learning outcome. This is a little blown up view of that. So we're showing, again, the repeated sets of the course learning outcomes, and the red would be your institutional competency learning outcome. And then the blue is if you click that checkbox, then it automatically upmaps it to the competency. Here's the approval process for the competency. We are going to go through the similar process that you have for Kappa, so there's no change to that. There's going to be an additional step at the end where it goes to the institutional competency subcommittee. So we tried to set this up because we didn't want to add another complete workflow, right, to delay the process. So we just built the competency approval on top of what you already have in the system. Once the courses are approved, it's going to be visible to the students, which is the goal, right, of what we are trying. It's going to be available, obviously, in the bulletin, this online amazing bulletin that we're working on. It's going to go live in Jan of 25. And then it'll also be available for the students in the CLR portal that Fiona's going to talk about now.
So now the fun part. This is the part that the students get to access. So you go ahead and click. So when we went out to determine how to design the actual comprehensive learner record, we knew we needed to think about the target audience. So the target audience for this approval process was the faculty and staff, and we tested that with them. But for the actual comprehensive learner record itself, we knew we needed to go out to students and also to employers and professional programs. So that's what we did. We asked employers what they were interested in seeing. They wanted something that was clear and concise. They wanted the ability to see the competency information for students highlighted, and they also wanted to make sure it was validated and could be shareable. The students, I guess probably not surprising to all of you, but to us, they really wanted it to look nice. Like that was their priority. So yeah, that was what it was all about. So we're like, okay, we have to remember that. They also wanted to be able to share it up easily in social media, so that was a key for them. And then they also wanted it to highlight their competencies. So we knew at that point in time that we are not good at designing anything. Well, that's not true. We're good at designing the process and the back end, but the actual visual, we really needed help. And so we went with a graphic design company here in Athens. Just strangely enough, it's a Grady grad that we work with, that we actually worked with too many years ago to design the first online bulletin, and he was a student in new media when he started working on that with us. So, so yeah, we kind of come full circle. But so anyway, they worked on, I think it was between 10 and 15 mocks that we took out to the students and the employers and asked them what they liked and why, and this is what they settled on. So it's really nice, it's very clean, has the student's name, has the UGA logo, and right now, I think the really nice thing about this and what they said they liked about it was the employers liked that it was very clear, it was uncluttered, they could see instantly what they were looking at. They liked that it was validated and that was clear. There's a lot of different institutions working on things, but most of what they're working on is things that are self-produced and they're not validated by the institution. The students loved the look of this, so that was exciting. Of all the ones they looked at, they really liked the look and feel of this one. They liked that their competencies were highlighted, which was really nice. And if you click on any one of these numbers, it takes you down to the next page. So what employers liked about this is that they can drill down to a specific competency. So if they're hiring people they're looking for leadership skills when they're hiring, they can click on leadership. And what this shows is all of the courses and activities for this particular student that they've chose to highlight, where the learning outcomes for that course or activity meets the learning outcomes for, in this case, leadership and collaboration. So the employers were excited about this. The students were really happy about this. And I think what the most surprising takeaway of all for us was when the students looked at this, they said, oh my gosh, this is what I've needed. This shows exactly what I've done for leadership, for communication. It gives me the words and the tools to talk about my learning at UGA, but with concrete evidence and examples, which I haven't had before. So they talked about being in job interviews. One woman talked about being in a job interview where she was asked about her communication skills. She didn't really know what to say. She said, if I had had this when I first started at UGA, I would have been thinking, no, communication is important. I need to be selecting courses and activities where I have an opportunity to practice that and learn more about that. And if I had done that, I would have had this and I would have had something to talk about in the interview. I'm trying to think if I'm skipping anything. I think the main thing that, oh, and also it's shareable, so that was really nice too. So it can pop up on LinkedIn. It's also a record that they'll be able to keep with them after they leave UGA and continue to add to. Another really nice feature, something that was really important to students when we started this project, and actually to faculty too, they wanted the ability for students to be able to curate this CLR. So in this tool, they get to say, here's all the activities and all the courses, but I can create a CLR template for a different employer, for a professional program where I highlight different things. For students, they said, I do this great volunteer work with pretty liberal causes. I'm going to apply for this job that's fairly conservative corporation. I don't want to highlight those on this particular CLR, so they can go in and just pick and choose what they want to highlight for the particular CLR that they're going to share. So we thought, okay, this is amazing. The students love it, but how are they going to learn about it? So then we realized we needed a portal, a way for them to see what are competencies, why are they important, and what do they mean for them, and then how can they acquire those skills while they're at the University of Georgia. So we've created this portal. So the vision is when they come into orientation from day one, we're going to introduce them to the portal. We're going to talk to them about competencies. And from that day on, they'll be able to see when they're completing courses and activities where their strengths are and maybe where they need to improve. And then if they want to find other courses and activities, we've created this search site that lets them search for competencies based on courses and activities around campus. So it'll tell them what's available for them, and they can search by either the competency or the type or the semester. So I think for us, the project got more and more exciting the more we went through working with the students and working with the employers and the professional programs. And now we're at the point where we need your help, right? Because the students aren't going to be able to fill this comprehensive learner record if there's not courses and activities that have been submitted as meeting those competencies. And we know already from looking at courses, there's lots of courses out there and activities, leadership programs that you have all over campus in the different schools and colleges where you're already doing this, and this is an opportunity for you to highlight that you're doing that in your existing courses by using this tool. you have any questions? Yes, I thought there might be a few.
Well, the first one that comes, I have two, but I'll go. If there are 3 professors teaching the same class but different sections and we all handle things differently, will that reflect for them?
No, so that's a really good point. So it means that every time that course and that number is taught, you have to be including those skills in that course, or it won't be submitted and approved as meeting that competency.
Not every course will be submitted to this.
No, this is-
For 100%.
No, not at all. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So this is just courses where you're already doing that. So if you have courses where students are doing presentations, they're already doing that, getting that communication skill, maybe with clients, maybe with others across your school, then you can highlight that in that class. And it doesn't matter who's teaching that class. They're always going to have that activity in the class, and therefore it'll always meet that competency. And if not, then you don't put it through the system, and it doesn't become a part of this. You can ask more questions. Yeah, sorry.
Wrapping my head around it.
Okay, yeah.
Hey Fiona, is there any opportunity for students to upload like portfolio materials or something like this?
There's the ability to enhance associated with the courses and activities that are in there. So they will be able to add to those. So if they're working at a particular corporation with an internship, they can put up information about that. They can put up information about projects that they've done. So all of those are verifiable by the activity director or the instructor. So those will be able to be added, but not separate, not outside of that, not self-reported.
I would encourage y'all to think about that because we all teach professionalized classes where we're producing work that employers want to see in terms of value.
If you're doing that in the class, you can certainly add it to this. Yeah, so I'm just saying, we got a question the other day about people that had created portfolios on their own, and could they upload those? No. But if it's part of the environment where they're in the class or the activity, absolutely. There's a way to upload it.
Who publishes a story for the AJC as part of the class, would that student be able to put a PDF of that story?
Yeah, there's a way to upload to the CLR and add to it. Shafali's hesitating because we haven't got that working yet, but it is in the vision. I know, I could feel it. Yeah.
What does the approval process look like for adding competencies to current classes? Like, will that have to go through UC for approval for everything? Like, what is the?
You're so familiar with this faculty governance, I can just see you thinking, oh no, not that.
I mean, I just can see the possible madness of everybody trying to submit this all at once, and so like, what is it going to look like in terms of the rollout to make sure that there's not some weird bottleneck? And
So we have an IC, or Institutional Competencies Subcommittee of UCC, that will be tasked with this. And once they've approved it, they're approving it on behalf of the University Curriculum Committee, so that's it done. And they're already working. So they've got together, we have a meeting coming up in October where they'll start reviewing these, but they can go in now to Kappa Browse and start looking at them and thinking about them. So hopefully it's going to be like every couple weeks they're going to be reviewing and approving until we get through this first wave.
is there a possibility of things not being approved and then sent back again?
Yes.
Like, what is that? Okay, so if
Yep.
like, we are saying this is a competency and y'all are like, I don't know, it'll just do that.
I think it's going to be iterative at this first part because they're going to be figuring out as a committee what is okay, what's enough, what does this look like. So the guidelines will improve as they start considering things. But I think it'll be that back and forth. So you'll get it back and it'll say, you need to tweak this or add this or can you do this? And then it'll come back to the committee and it'll probably get approved. That same way we've been doing a lot of things. So yeah.
I do not envy that committee.
Yeah.
You mentioned that students will be able to access it after they graduate. So how do they use the SSO? Or do they create a new password? Like how does it act? Because I can see.
Yeah, they'll get a new ID that they're able to use indefinitely with this vendor that we're using. That was part of what we purchased when we purchased the product. So they won't have to use their UGA ID forever. Yes.
What's the difference between getting a course approved in this process and an extracurricular activity?
It's a different.
Really different.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different path, but it will be the same institutional competency subcommittee that'll approve them. Right now we have a subcommittee for experiential learning, which you're all familiar with, and they are already approving activities for experiential learning. So, but the path up there is The activity can come from a department in a school and college, or it can come from an activity director in student affairs, and it's signed off by the VP for student affairs, and then it comes to this committee. So I think, yeah.
I'm trying to get a sense of how onerous is the paperwork to do it.
It's not. It's all going to be on this, and we're going to show you a brief overview of what that looks like. I know that you're not going to actually go into CAPA, but it'll give you an idea of how the system works. It's really simple. And that same online system is what you're going to use for activities that you're using for the courses. So there's no paperwork. You might be working on paper with whoever's going to put it in if you don't want to put it in the system, but it's all an online process. And there's online voting and online browse that you can look through. Yeah.
Hey, I've got 2 questions. One actually does relate to EL, so thanks for teeing that up. So I know there's a search feature within this new portal. Does that connect to like the current EL Engage portal, or is that going to?
I think it'll be.
For activities?
Yeah, so the EL activities will not meet a competency unless they come through the competency path for the CLR. Okay. So they're 2 separate things, but you will be able from this portal to access the ability to search for EL and the ability to search for competencies.
Okay, so then an activity potentially has 2 different approval processes, the EL approval and this approval.
That's correct, absolutely.
And then additional question, clarifying everything that's in the portal is going to be academically related, whether it's EL or coursework. And I'm asking because I work with students in career services, so I'm guessing if this is a complement to the resume, so if there's an internship that has nothing to do with coursework, they're just doing it on their own?
No.
It can be uploaded in here?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's kind of, think about EL, well, EL's a pretty good example of that, right? So if you're doing leadership activities, either in the college or at student affairs, they're going to submit those leadership activities, and they don't have to be associated with any course.
Do they have to be EL approved?
No.
Okay, great.
No, completely separate. Yeah, good question. Yeah. How are you?
How are you, Fiona?
Good.
I'm going to stand up because it's early, and I just wanted to, I can see how much work has been gone and it has gone into this, so I appreciate all the work behind the scenes. I do want to make sure I understand one of your early responses to one of the questions. And the question was, if there are multiple instructors teaching the same course number, and my understanding in terms of mapping the competencies with this is that if there are some differences between the sections, what the instructors, the only thing that should be uploaded is something that's in common and done in all those sections. It does not have to mean that each class must be identical. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely not. And right now, all of your courses that have been approved have learning outcomes / course objectives. We use that terminology back and forth. And that they're approved for that course no matter who teaches it. So everybody is supposed to be teaching to those learning outcomes when they teach the course. How they go about that and what they do with lessons and how they work in the classroom is completely up to the faculty member, obviously, but they're supposed to be meeting those learning outcomes, and it's those learning outcomes that are tying to the competency. So I think if you're teaching a course and you want to include things in the learning outcomes you might not have included before, but you're all doing that in the class, you can certainly modify those learning outcomes as you go through this process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good clarification. Yeah.
To follow up on that one, if the faculty vote to change learning outcomes over time, are they going to maintain the old learning outcomes and the new ones based upon when a student took the class?
Yes, I mean, that's the way courses work right now. So you're changing, I think we have 1,200 course changes every year, and about between 400 and 500 new courses every year. So they're evolving, and what'll happen is the attribute will go on the course for that semester. So if the student takes the course in the semester where it met the competency, then it'll be up on the CLR. If the next semester they change it, it no longer meets the competency, from that effective term on, it won't. So, good question. Yeah.
So is it potentially possible in the future, say some student who is totally irrelevant to communication looks at the line of competency and is like, oh, hey, communication is actually really important. And then do they rush to sign up for communication relevant classes to catch up? Because it might, if you look at the little pie, it might seem like they have a weakness if it's super slim. So what happens when there are certain courses that are already enrolled and other courses that are not, but all these other outside students are like, hey, now we're going to all try to sign up and catch up on these weaknesses?
Yeah, so I think sort of hidden in that is, will this drive students to enroll in courses where they can attain these competencies? I think so, which for most faculty are kind of happy about. Obviously, if you have classes that have limited capacity, then you can put POD and other things like that on there. But we're going to be working with students and advisors really early on. So every semester when they're being advised, that advisor can help them look at this and see where their opportunities are. We know from working with the curriculum as long as we have, there are lots of choices students have with electives and different things. Like right now they're double majoring in certificates and everything else, but they can also make choices when they're picking those courses to say, oh, I'd really like a course where I can have exposure to this. So we're hoping that they'll use it that way, but it'll be interesting. So the students have been really, really excited. Yeah.
I just want to, off Grace's question, ask, I think I heard this earlier, but I want to make sure I understand. She mentioned like there might look like a weakness because it's only a slim thing, but I as a student can toggle whether that slim thing even counts in the CLR that I create and produce. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
yeah, so you could just choose to have a CLR that only had 2 competencies on it. Or maybe just leadership if that's what you're trying to highlight for wherever it is you're going to share it out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, the students were
It's a
really
lot of
excited about that part.
work that
Yeah.
all of you have done.
Sorry, and I was just going to add that in addition to the competency, you can also select which courses and activities you want to include.
Okay.
Right, so it's not like you say leadership and everything under leadership would be automatically included, so you can actually pick and choose to that level.
So cool.
Yeah.
Is there a relationship between this new thing that employers will see and the request for a transcript, an official transcript?
So this complements the transcript, and we are looking at ways that students could request both. But right now, this tool allows students to share at any moment in time with wherever they want to share it. The transcript, of course, you have to go through our office and request and have it sent. But so we're trying to think about the best way to do that. We'll probably go out to students and ask them what they need. But yes, it complements the existing transcript. Yeah.
So if I have 2 students and at the end of the semester, one of them is slaying their critical thinking skills and another is just like floundering and for the love of God can't figure it out. They're both going to have it listed, right, that they have these competencies?
That's right.
So it's unrelated to
So we didn't, you can, as I'm sure you know, that you can get pretty granular with this stuff, right? So it's like introductory to mastery. So I think conceptually, we realized with students, this was a good way to start. I think there'll be opportunity later on to take it down to a more granular level, but you're right, at this point in time, if they pass that course now, nothing will show up in the CLR until they've passed the course. So if they don't pass the course, it's not on there. It's not on there when it's in progress, it's only when they've completed. Yeah, other questions? So I'm going to show you CAPA real quickly, even though y'all don't go in and put your own courses in there, just so you can see it, because I think it's a good place for you to go and look at browse and see what your course objectives, learning outcomes are currently. I think what we're envisioning is that you would look at your, and we're going to work later and fine-tune this, but you'll be able to see your current course objectives and learning outcomes. You'll be able to look at the sheet, and we'll have a link from the CAPA site. We also have this information right now on the Registrar's website and the OVPI website. If you put in CLR, it'll get you there. But you'll have the ability to see what you've got and then see articulated, I think it's on the sheet you have, the different learning outcomes for the competencies, and just map across to those on paper, give those to someone, and they'll be able to enter this for you. Oh, you have it here?
Yeah. Display the whole, let me see if I can.
I think we're having trouble mirroring up here.
Well,
get on?
with technology,
Okay.
I'll just say that, as you can see, there's a lot that's gone into this and that will go into this. It will all go through the same process that we use for changing or approving courses. So the first steps are going to be for you to think about what courses of yours that might align with these competencies we will be getting with the department heads for the structure about how to put those proposals through. We're trying to launch this thing in summer orientation. So my hope is we can have at least some of our courses through this process to be voted on at reading day at the end of this semester, you know, through the curriculum committee and at reading day. Not all of them, but some, so that we can get started on this process, and then it will be ongoing. We're not gonna have everything done, but I'd like to have some courses from each department through the voting process for our December reading day big faculty meeting. So, okay, so hear that.
So this is the Kappa homepage. Take it over.
So I'm going to walk you through, so Shefali showed you briefly how to submit a course change just with some screenshots. I'm going to actually walk you through that process to show you kind of how simple it is. So if you're familiar with Kappa, this is the front page of Kappa. I'm actually going to start in Browse. I'm going to click Browse here. This is where you can go and see all your courses, the courses that are approved, the courses that are in process for approval. So I'm just going to look up, for example, journalism courses. If you've never been here, this is a great resource to come look and see what courses are out there. And I'm just going to look at this Journalism 3030 course. And it has a course ID, title, course description, credit hours, has all the information for your course, the approved course. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to scroll down here to this course objectives and expected learning outcomes. And you'll see what Shefali mentioned, that these course objectives are kind of in this block of text. So what we are wanting people to do is to go into Kappa and to split these course objectives out into individual learning outcomes, which I'm going to show you in just a moment, as well as the topical outline. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll see these fields expand and you can see more information. And once your course has gone through the IC submission process, or EL as well as in Kappa, you will be able to actually come into Browse and click on these drop downs and see that information in Browse as well. So that's good for your faculty, and for students can come here as well to see that course information. And stop me at any point if you have any questions. This is informal. I'm going to return to the home page of Kappa, and now I'm going to go into actually submit a course change. And I'll just mention that this is a test environment. I'm going to submit a course change to a journalism course, but this is not actually going through that approval process.
It's an easy way to do it.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to log into Kappa, and I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to look at that same course we were just looking at. I'm going to go to journalism. I'm going to act like I'm a department course initiator, and this can be, faculty in your department, or this can be a staff person. I'm going to begin a course change or deletion proposal. I'm going to select journalism as my prefix, and then I'm just going to select a course here. We'll just go ahead and go with the honors version of that 3030 course and begin proposal. So this should look like the screen that Shefali was showing. You're going to scroll down. You're on the course change deletion tab. You'll see that the course objectives and the topical outline are pre-selected for you. That's going to force you to go in and submit changes to change that block of course objectives text to those individual learning outcomes. I'm going to keep scrolling down, and you'll see this institutional competency selection. I'm going to click that. I'm going to click proceed. And now I'm going to go to this syllabus tab. And this is where all your current course objectives are listed. This is that block of text again. So we need to split all these out into these individual fields. So what you can do, and it should be drafted in student learning outcome language. So if you need assistance in changing your course objectives to student learning outcome language, the Center for Teaching and Learning is available to assist with that, and we also have some guidelines in Kappa for that as well. So what we're asking people to do is essentially review your current learning outcomes, and if they need to be updated, you can update those. You can also simply just copy a learning outcome and you will paste it into this field here. You need to, if you want to add another one, you can add multiple rows and do that and be revising them as you go to that student learning outcomes language. So that's just an example there. So once I'm done here, I'm going to go, and I've made all my changes. I've put those learning outcomes in those individual fields. I'm going to go back up to this IC tab, which Shefali showed you. And you'll see all the IC competencies, the competencies for that have been approved. If you click on this plus sign, it's going to open up that box, and you'll see now that those learning outcomes that I just put on the syllabus tab are now showing in this form. And that's why it's important to break them out. If you don't, then that big block of text is just going to show here, and you won't be able to select those individual learning outcomes. So these are the learning outcomes for the IC themselves. So you'll see that each institutional competency have defined learning outcomes. So what you're going to take is the learning outcomes for the course, and you're going to map them to the learning outcomes of the institutional competencies. For example, if you think this course meets this learning outcomes for that course, and this is just an example, meets that critical thinking IC, then you will select that. And you'll see that once I click that box, it automatically selected this critical thinking IC at the top. So you're going to review all your learning outcomes. You're going to map them to the ICs as appropriate. You may not have any courses that meet IC. You may have a course that meets only one or two. Not all courses are going to meet every IC. So that's part of that review process.
Was that music for emphasis?
Yeah. And then once you've made your selections, you can come to this box at the bottom and provide additional information or justification of how your course meets those competencies. And then you'll put in this information, and you'll click submit to department staff and click proceed. And then it's just going to flow through that normal CAPA approval process that Shefali was showing you that diagram of. It's going to go through the department, the college, and then it will go to the institutional competency subcommittee for approval, and then it will be, once approved, it's going to be up in the bulletin in that CAPA browse we talked about, and then flow to that CLR eventually. Any questions about that?
Yes, I saw when you were on the very first page before you edited anything, there were two little warnings that popped up that said, it says this is like not in line with the course objectives, should be revised to reflect SLO outcomes. How is that being applied to courses? Like some courses already have this language, I'm guessing they're not receiving this indicator, or is everybody receiving it?
It's part of the form, so when you go in, everyone will see that message, and it's really just to encourage you to review the current course objectives to make sure it's meeting that student learning outcomes language. Some people may already have that, but it's still an opportunity to review.
Okay, so it's not like that someone's reviewed and noticed that it's out of alignment with best practices.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, that's okay. I just want to make sure it's not like someone has gone in or there's been some sort of magic wand waved that indicates that these are not in accordance.
At this
That's right.
point, we need them separated into learning outcomes, so it was easier just to go with this all or nothing approach. But you're right, some of them might already be written that way, which is fine. You can just copy them into the separate boxes, and then when you're coming back in, eventually we'll change that language because there'll be more in there that are correct than the way they are now. But good question.
So are we going to need to go through and reformat the course objectives into SLOs for every single course regardless of the...
Anytime you go into CAPA for the last year, you've been forced to do that. So it's only when you're changing courses that we're requiring that happen. And so the same would be true now. We're not asking everybody to go in and do that for every course. But if you're putting a course in to change it or to add the competency or EL, we're going to ask you to do that. We actually, in our office, had this wild notion we were going to do that for you, but we started down that path and we're like, oh no, we can't, because the way they were written, there was no way to just simply port it over and separate. So unfortunately, you'll have to do that. Yeah.
Is that area for additional justification at the bottom of the IC page?
For right now, the committee is not envisioning that anybody has to put anything there. What we learned the hard way when we automated a lot of our forms and approval process was people wanted to tell you something. So then we get an email saying, oh, and when you look at this, think about this. So this is kind of like a Post-it note right now. It's whatever you need to put in there to ask us that we can review. Now, as we go through this process, the committee might want additional information, but right now, that's not a required field. Yeah.
Would it be possible for us to get the CAPA instructions step by step?
Oh, we have that.
Have on hand? Okay, great.
Yeah, we actually have little video tutorials, we have paper instructions, yeah, we got it all. And we are happy, so after we leave for today, depending on how you want to proceed as a college, we're happy to just meet with the department, to get on Zoom with y'all, to come and meet with you in a room and put them in and help you with that process. So whatever we can do to help facilitate this, we've done that in the past and it's worked out really well because you can ask questions and we can answer those as we're going through the process. So. Yeah.
Right. So some classes have just over semester they have an E version and an honor version and a speech level version, and most of the competencies are similar.
Yes.
So with the ability to duplicate and then go in and make tiny changes, or you need to go through the same process for each class?
Right now, you'd have to go through the same process for each class, but we could help you with that if you want help. Yeah, because it would be easy. Once you get it right for one, it's just putting it in those other, so, yeah.
Within each box of IC items,
Mm-hmm.
can you check all the products?
Yeah.
So you can check what products?
Yes, you can check multiple items, you can check multiple learning outcomes and multiple competencies for a given course or activity.
So then on students' transcript, with 6 competencies pie chart, the numbers do not necessarily represent exact number of course.
Yeah, it's
the
interesting.
numbers don't add up.
That's
It's
correct.
the number of
Yeah.
courses.
So the numbers really represent the number of courses or activities they've participated in. And then when you drill down on that comprehensive learner record, it'll highlight the specific learning outcomes that you selected from your course. Those will appear there. Yeah, but it's a good question. Yeah.
Who do you envision as primarily advising students on walking through their comprehensive learning record as they're going forward? I'm just thinking about questions coming to faculty, but also advisors, and also, you know, some of us have student assistants who are doing some advising. So I'm just curious what this rollout's going to look like campus-wide as far as making sure we're all prepared to guide students through what they need to be doing.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, it's sort of like we're building it as we go. So, but we have a great collaborative working relationship with advisors. So we've already been talking to them. We'll have forums for them, training for them, and we work really well with them, like in time, right in time. So we'll be using this beginning in June, and by June they will understand how this works. But I think what this gives us is an opportunity to partnership much more with the career development and the career side of things, which we haven't done in the past. So it's pulling them in and making sure that they're a part of this also. Yeah, that's a good question. Anything else? Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. When you are thinking about this after the fact, if you'll just, at kappa.uga.edu, you can send us any questions, thoughts, negative feedback, anything, because we're actually revising the form based on the feedback we're getting from you right now. So anything you see or would like to see differently, let me know. Yeah.
I was just wondering if, Janice, you could give us a better understanding about the process here in Grady and what we're going to be
Right,
doing.
and that's what we're going to be working on next. This is new for us as well. So I envision working with the department heads to figure out sort of the process. My guess is that Sophie and Cheryl and Joanne will be the actual people who will go into Kappa, that we will use Word docs to put our proposals through, and then they'll actually put it into Kappa. You know, so more information to come. I do think that the departments will need to sit down and think what courses do we want to push through first. My sense is it'll probably be a lot of the capstone courses will be some of the first to go in because they do all of these things. All of this is so new, and we're going to all sort of figure it out as we go, but more information about the actual physical process will be coming in the next week or so. Does that answer your question?
And I guess I'd also encourage you, if you have courses that incoming students are taking where you have these competencies, that would be great too, because they'll get them thinking about that early on. So, yeah.
So, last chance. Last chance for a question.
Yeah.
Any plan to implement this for faculty?
We are doing it.
Kids, what kind of competencies?
Yeah, it's great. It is available for undergrad and grad students. So we have had a lot of interest from graduate students also. Our primary focus in rolling it out was the undergrad, but so it will be available for grad students also.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.